The Early Intervention Program touches families every day. Meet its statewide director and a family member who was touched. Coming up next on this morning's Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're on 4th Avenue in Conway at the Coastal Regional Outreach Center for the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind. We're focused on the Early Intervention Program. We're visiting with the statewide director, Lynda Smith. Good morning, Lynda.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Anytime.
Very excited in hearing about the program and learning a little bit. And of course, earlier this week, Marty McKenzie was with us yesterday morning. We're going to be focused a little bit on some other exciting things here in the area later this week. But sure wanted to get you in, and exciting to get Hillary Zabec in a little while later this morning.
Good.
Real quick about yourself. Are you originally from the area?
I am from Columbia.
You are? Okay, great.
Born and raised in South Carolina.
You're a Palmetto State native?
You bet.
How long have you been working with the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind?
About 11 years.
Okay. What originally prompted that interest?
Well, I majored in deaf ed and deafness and blindness, and worked for the Helen Keller National Center, and then worked with adults in the rehab center and teaching daily living skills, and realized that they needed early help and wanted to get into early intervention, and made the switch in the middle 80s to early intervention.
Now, there was already a program in early intervention in South Carolina, or?
There was the beginnings of a program in early intervention, and that started in the late 70s. I'm really dating myself here.
Oh, yeah.
But we became a statewide program in the middle 80s called BabyNet. And that came forth through laws passed, and we became partners with DHEC, which is the Department of Health and Environmental Control, to serve early intervention families in South Carolina.
You know, that aspect, of course, of having worked with adults, I mean, you would, I guess, so oftentimes folks who get in working with adults probably always recognize, or do they regularly recognize that golly, it'd be great to start with them in their youth and try to get this going so that we could really have an impact on them early on?
I think that probably is recognized, and that is why parents began to say, catch my kids early, show me what to do very early on so that I will know what to do later on.
What are some of the early intervention services offered, let's say, in the outreach centers throughout the state here with the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind?
Well, we are a collaborating agency with DHEC to serve all children birth to age 3 through our BabyNet program. So we are the providers of Part C of IDEA, which is a federal law. And under that law, we have 16 mandated services that families can get if the service is needed. The first service that every family gets is a service coordinator. And with the service coordinator and the family, we work together to figure out what does the child need, what does the family need. We are very family focused in the services because we want to teach the family to work with their child.
Right, sure. What does the child need and what does the family need? And that is critical. And of course, so oftentimes you think about an individual, but it really wraps around the family.
It does, very early on. And teaching the parents or the caregiver or whoever has the child to be the most empowered person to understand that child. We are there for 3 short years if we get them early on. Sometimes we don't get them till they're 30 months old. So we've got a lot of work to do in that 6 months time period.
What about first, I mean, when you say sometimes you don't get them until 30 months, is it oftentimes because the parent just wasn't able to recognize some of the impairments, or the impairments were slow to gain?
Usually with our visually impaired children, it will start very early, and it's very noticeable. With our hearing impaired kids, it's not as noticeable sometimes. We do have our first sound program now where children are tested in the hospital, and they leave the hospital knowing if they have a hearing impairment. So that helps us identify them much earlier. But we are really focusing on identifying children birth to age 1 is where we have to work on our numbers to catch them early.
I'm trying to think about in the hospital how you, I mean, you know, children, of course, are I guess the head movements and otherwise. So
Well, they have some very sophisticated equipment that
Yeah.
they do in the newborn nurseries to make sure children leave knowing if they have a hearing impairment or not.
Right.
And that's called our First Sound program, and that's put out through DHEC also, one of our collaborating agencies.
Is this something indicative of all states or just particularized to South Carolina?
Most states have a First Sound. They will call it something different. Most states have an early intervention program. We call ours BabyNet.
Right. Now, you said it's a lot easier for sound as opposed to the vision. Is that right? That it's easier to figure out early on?
You will see the visually impaired child first because you're not getting maybe the eye contact. You're noticing the eyes are not where they need to be. They're moving around. And sometimes kids with a hearing impairment, you think they're hearing, and they act like they're hearing, but they're not hearing.
Mm-hmm.
But we're catching them earlier also through our First Sound program.
Oftentimes, I guess it is difficult for parents to recognize, their child's visual impairment. Sometimes you'll see a child, for instance, standing up close to the TV and just assume, kids love standing up close to the TV.
Right.
They want to get near it. When in actuality, they just can't see anything.
They can't. Exactly.
Unless they're very close up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
And
sure
some of those noticeable things. We're also having to work with our pediatricians so that when the parent does go and say, I think something's wrong, we don't want our pediatricians to have the tendency to say, let's wait. We don't want to wait. We'd rather over-refer and get the children in and make sure they're okay than to not get them at all.
Of course, a critical question for a lot of parents is, what do I have to pay for these services?
I don't want to say it's at no cost because it does cost us money to have the program, but parents don't pay for the service
Okay.
because we are paid for through our federal dollars and our state dollars.
Can you all also raise funds privately, or are there needs privately? I was fascinated in seeing, going through the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind, to see, a heck of a lot comes from the state of the regular budget, and then some from service fees, but then a lot of it made by private donations.
We could access some of those, but we are a federal program of IDEA, and when you receive money from the federal government, you are not allowed to cost share right now, and so the parent does not pay. That may change in the near future. We may have a sliding fee scale. None of that's been established yet.
And you said you've been doing this work for quite a while, but with children only for the last how many years?
11 years with our BabyNet program, and 5 years prior to that at a children's program for blind children.
Is there a pretty large intervention staff working in our area? Let's say the Coastal Regional Outreach Center, the PD, and here on the Strand?
Well, in the PD, you would have your BabyNet coordinators who work for DHEC. There is one in every county, and sometimes more than one. We have our early intervention staff. We have 3 right now who are full-time, and we have several part-time staff who go in and do the special instruction piece, who work directly with the child and with the family, and are on the IFSP team.
The IFS,
which is the Individualized Family Service Plan. And that's the plan that we all come together and develop with the family. The family is the lead on that.
When you think about one per county, that is oftentimes, and of course Marty was with us yesterday, Marty McKenzie, talking about...
I taught Marty.
Is that right?
I was his rehab teacher.
Oh, God, well, that's exciting. He talked about a Margie Holiday, who you may know. I don't know if that name rings a bell.
His vision teacher.
It was his vision teacher, excuse me, that's right. And of course the excitement there, as he talked about, where there are dramatic needs statewide, but I think he talked about folks, for instance, in teaching Braille, that there were only 86 potentially throughout the state, or even less than that. But the opportunity to have a BabyNet representative in each county is...
We do. We also have capacity issues and getting enough service providers, because we also work with physical therapists and occupational therapists and speech language. We have audiologists and we have our physicians. All are on those teams, and getting enough providers is a capacity issue.
What is some of the training required for the early intervention staff, Lynda? Now, and are you involved in that?
Yes, I'm involved with that. We have a credentialing process that they have to go through, and that is run through TEX, which is another collaborating agency within DHEC to help us get qualified staff members to work birth to age 3. Now, with our staff, they're required to meet all those credentialing qualifications, plus we have our own training for specializing in the vision and the hearing part.
How do parents go about learning about service providers, and what are some of the ways that, of course, and maybe we could talk a little bit, and obviously Hillary will be in a few minutes to share a little bit from a parent's perspective, but maybe given some ideas of some of the aspects that parents should be looking for. But how do they find out about service providers in their area?
Usually, we find them through Child Find. We work with, of course, DHEC and the State Department of Ed to collaboratively together work to find these kids and to, let the physicians know to make these referrals. When it comes to finding the service providers, that is a team effort with the service coordinator and the family in the development of the plan. Each Horry County has certain providers that we know who they are, and they are willing to work in the natural environment, and they understand birth to age 3. So, but we're always looking for people who are interested. We need to build capacity in this area.
Great. What are some of the ways, if someone felt they could be of service, what are some of the ways they can get in touch with you?
They are welcome to call this office here,
okay,
and talk with Dorothy, and she can get us in touch with whoever. We're always looking for those providers.
That's wonderful. This is the 843-248-8100 number here.
You are correct.
Okay. And of course, there's the opportunity, obviously, with those needs being as high as they are, with capacity issues being one. Are there these volunteer opportunities for folks, or is it
No, it is paid.
Oh, it is. Okay. Wow.
You would get a contract. You would have to meet all the credentialing, but we are willing to grow people into this area. Parents need us. The children need us. This whole area needs to grow capacity.
Let's talk for a couple of minutes about some of the aspects that parents could potentially be looking for, whether it's for on the early intervention side, just to make sure that they know to get in touch with you all. They're concerned, just like you talked about, even on the pediatrician side. What are some things that parents should be asking their pediatrician to, even some basic questions they should be asking?
Children develop normally along certain developmental guidelines, and usually the pediatrician is going to give you a list. Is your child doing this? Is there doing? But if you've just got something in your heart or something in your gut that says something's not right, ask the question over and over and over to the pediatrician, to our BabyNet staff at our local DHEC offices, until you get the answer you want and you feel satisfied. My child is okay, or I need special help. Keep asking the question.
So oftentimes, with working parents, the child oftentimes with a caregiver other than the parent for much of the day, and so they may not see the critical activities that a child's involved in, close things, moving paperwork around, or moving kid stuff around. The parent may not even see some of the potential issues there. Are there things that the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind does with even child care facilities?
Yes, they're all. Yes, you're correct. They're part of our Child Find process, and we go out into the daycares. We're not looking for just children with sensory impairments, but we're looking for any child with a developmental delay that we can help, and we are working with our daycares to do that.
Okay. Lynda, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
You are more than welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Okay.
Stay tuned to more Carolina Peep with Hillary Zabec coming up next. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're on 4th Avenue in Conway at the Coastal Outreach Service Center for the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind. We're visiting with one of the parents of a visually impaired child, Hillary Zabec. Good morning, Hillary.
Good morning.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And Lynda in just a few minutes ago, and of some of the aspects of the early intervention program, this has been critical in y'all's life.
It has been a godsend. I don't know what I would have done having not had the services.
How did you find out about it?
Well, that was an ordeal because apparently not all physicians know about the School for Deaf and Blind Services. So when my daughter was born, we realized that she had a visual impairment, and we started interviewing doctors. And lo and behold, we found one in Columbia that put us in touch with BabyNet, and BabyNet then put us in touch with South Carolina School for Deaf and Blind.
How did y'all go ahead and how were you able to find out, and how early were you able to find out that your daughter had visual impairment?
Well, the first time I held her, she opened her eyes a little bit, and I noticed that her eye movement was not the same as my older daughter's eye movements when they were when both of them were first born.
Uh-huh.
And so that kind of put up a red flag. And we began to address that, going to eye doctors and trying to figure out what she had.
You know that, so eye doctors can tell at a pretty early age. I mean, they're clearly able to, at a pretty early age, begin to tell about the levels of some of the impairment.
Yes, Allie has what's called congenital motor nystagmus, and that's where she has uncontrollable movement of her eyes. So as soon as she opened her eyes began to sweep horizontally across, and that's not typical of a newborn baby, and so that's how we knew that something was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Are there some aspects that y'all can utilize to treat that, or is that something that's treatable?
It is untreatable.
It is
No,
untreatable
at this time. Now, we don't know what will happen 10 to 15 years from now, but it is a neurological disorder, and so it cannot be treated right now. She does wear glasses, but it's for other problems with her eyes. It's not for the nystagmus.
I was reading this morning a little about a small, oftentimes so many visual impairments are untreatable, whether through surgery or otherwise, is amblyopia. And oftentimes child will put a patch over one eye to try to strengthen the other eye. It was fascinating
Right.
going through aspects of so many visual impairments that cannot be treated.
Yes, and unfortunately, because it's neurological, they cannot fix something that's neurological at this time, but because I have been receiving services through the School for Deaf and Blind, they have taught me ways to work with Allie to improve her vision.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Hillary, when you think about it, you mentioned BabyNet. When a viewer hears that phrase, what exactly is BabyNet?
Well, BabyNet encompasses many other organizations such as the School for Deaf and Blind, and it has other services that they give, and my daughter did have services through BabyNet, such as physical therapy and speech therapy.
Mm-hmm. Share with the viewers a little about some of the aspects of the Conway or the Florence outreach centers are providing for children, let's say, in particular your daughter. What are some of the services that are provided?
Well, Allie in particular, she has received services through the School for Deaf and Blind where a parent advisor has been assigned to our family. And the parent advisor has come to our home and helped me teach Allie skills that she needs to advance. Especially because of her visual impairment, she has delays because 80% of learning is visual. So having that delay, she has delays in other areas also. But her main service has been a parent advisor that has been teaching me what to do for Allie.
And they come into the home on a regular basis? Is that?
It's a few times a month. Sometimes it's once a week, depending on the severity of the child.
Right.
And in my case, it has been once a week. And she will evaluate Allie's progress, and then based on her progress or lack of progress, we will either continue to try to learn the same skill or to try to move on to the next skill. And all skills build upon one another.
I think I saw that you're now being trained to become a parent advisor,
Yes.
much like this person's doing with you all.
Yes, it's been very inspiring. I've never worked with any special education children, so this has been quite an education for me. I do have a teacher's background, but I didn't work with special ed, so having worked with my daughter, I thought, gosh, this would be something great to give back and to help other children, since I've learned so much.
Now, Lynda used the word earlier, the word family, which really comes into play, and obviously an aspect for you, the ability for you to be home a good bit, to be able to spend time with Allie. How about the rest of the family? How is you've got an older daughter who does not have visual impairment?
No, I have an older daughter, Christy, who's 6,
Right.
and she has no visual impairment. She's just average. She goes to the local kindergarten, and she has been very helpful.
Yeah.
With my daughter, and it's funny because the parent advisor, when she comes in, uses my other daughter Christy to help with the younger one because they play a lot, and younger children learn through play. So the parent advisor has used my other daughter to help her with skills, and sort of be one more teacher for Allie, and it's been wonderful.
So, of course, in this instance, the parent advisors come into the home. Are there aspects where you will travel to other locations? For instance, travel here to the Conway location, this Coastal Outreach Service Center, travel to the PD ever? Or are there ever?
No, I've never had to do that. There are circumstances that you may need to do that, and another family might need to do that, but I have never had to do that. You can, say, meet a parent advisor at a playground if that's an issue with your child, and learn to do more physical skills, gross motor skills. But in my child's case, I have not had to do that. It's primarily in the home where the child is in their own environment and feels most comfortable, and therefore learning is much easier that way.
And Hillary, when will the services stop? When will they actually, and of course, the progress is occurring on a regular basis so that, as you said, everything builds on itself. Will the services stop at any point at a certain age, or is it dependent on the progress?
Well, they do birth to age 3, so when Allie turns 3, she will then go to the next step, which is preschool. And if she qualifies, she will go to Horry County preschools. And that's an ongoing thing. She's currently being evaluated for that right now.
Of course, there's so many services when you think about aspects, obviously, for you now going through the parent advisory training. Share with the viewers a little bit what that's like. And of course, having had a little bit of background, but of course, one other thing, a lot of parents think about, I can't be home with my child on a regular basis. For folks who potentially, I wonder what they're capable of going through. How I guess the levels of the severity of the visual impairment, possibly parent advisor coming to the house more than once a week.
Well, I don't know specifically. That's evaluated on a case-by-case basis. I do know that if a family has to have child care for their baby in an outside facility, then a parent advisor can go to the daycare or go to the grandmother's house, or wherever that child spends most of their time. A parent advisor will go to there. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the home. So as a parent advisor, I might have to go to a daycare situation or, family member, babysitter.
Is it pretty common that the training of potential parent advisors or of parents themselves who've been through this and recognize how critical that parent advisor was in their life and how they had such a dramatic impact on their family's life?
Well, I don't really know the statistics on the parents becoming advisors. You have to have a certain background, educational background for that. But I do know that the training that I went to, I was the only parent there. So that was a little intimidating because even though I do have an education background, they had special ed and deaf education and things like that. But as my trainer has pointed out to me, that my specific training came from specifically my daughter, and that intense one-on-one education that she gave me.
Absolutely. That would probably be as critical, or it probably is much more practical than any training. Now, of course, were there instances where, for instance, trainees would come with the parent advisor who worked with y'all, that would come in to learn a little bit about hands-on what that parent advisor is doing with you and your family? Were there ever instances where someone came with them, for instance, to watch?
Yes, one time we did have somebody who was interested in becoming a parent advisor, and she did come to my house. And the parent advisor called me beforehand and said, "Do you mind if I bring a potential training?" And I said that was fine.
Yeah, sure. What are some of the things that, I wonder how, for instance, now when you think back to the pediatricians early on, I think you mentioned that oftentimes even pediatricians may need a little extra training or be notified of the BabyNet opportunity, as well as the early intervention program, some of the aspects that the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind provide. Let's say in Horry County, what are some of the things that the pediatricians that you'd like to make sure they know?
Well, typically my experience for the past 2.5 years has been they don't want you to panic. So they'll say to you, well, let's wait, don't go off the deep end,
Mhm.
and as a parent, that's very hard to do because you want the best for your child and you don't want to wait. You want it fixed now, or
Right.
you want help now. So I just had to keep going to doctor after doctor after doctor who will listen to me and say, okay, let's take care of this now.
Mhm.
And we had to go all the way to Columbia to find that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Golly, you just wonder about those aspects about how you, of course, you want a doctor to be comforting,
Mhm.
and obviously the desire there is for them to be comforting. At the same time, you want to know that you want to have that encouragement to go get it checked out, or to keep, as Lynda talked about, if you've got that gut feeling.
Yes, we definitely
Move
had the
with it.
gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And, they call those people, hysterical mothers, unfortunately. But it's those mothers or fathers or caregivers that know that there's something wrong and feel that it warrants further attention, and you just have to find somebody who is willing to sit down with you and do that. And in our case, it has really been trying experience.
Mhm.
But as soon as you find that doctor, stick with them because you know you're in the right place.
That's great. When you think back to the first arrival of that parent advisor in the house and the progress that Allie and you as a family have made, can you look back and recognize the greatest sense of accomplishment for you and your entire family?
Yes, and I shared that during my training with some of the other trainees, that when I look back now and I think, had somebody asked me or had said to me, this is how your child will be in 2.5 years, I would have said, no way. There's no way, what I have in front of me now will be this, this child who has grown and has just advanced tremendously. I never would have believed it. And it's completely due to the fact that I was taught how to work with her on a daily basis through the School for Deaf and Blind.
That's wonderful. Hillary, thanks so much for being with us
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Hillary Zabec coming up next. To learn how to become a parent advisor for the early intervention program for the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind, call 843-248-8100.